Hello, everyone. Welcome to What's Up on the EDH Rec Twitch stream. This is a weekly AMA/interview style show where we bring on well-known people in the Magic the Gathering community and ask them lots of annoying questions. I'm your host, Andy Zupke, and joining me tonight is my guest, Eric Klug. Say hello to everyone, Eric.
Hello, everyone.
Perfect. Eric, first question. Right off the bat, we're going to just get right into it. The big question, the burning question that's on everybody's minds right now. How the hell are you? How are you doing?
Oh, wow. You caught me off guard with that. I'm doing well. I'm really excited to join you for this evening. And like we were talking about a little bit before we went live, it's been a while since I've been on a podcast or done a stream, so I'm excited to kind of interact with everybody in chat and answer some questions.
Absolutely, and we are excited to have you. Now, for anybody who's in chat who doesn't know who you are, why don't you go ahead and give us the rundown, give us a little info about who you are and what you do.
All right, so the long story short is my name's Eric Klug. I go by Klug Alters online across all social media, and I make magic card altars for a living, and basically what those are little miniature acrylic paintings on magic cards.
Which is
That's it.
which is very exciting if you've actually seen some of Eric's work. And Eric will definitely be putting some links in chat so that you can all see some of his work, since we can't really show it right here. But it's extremely impressive, and we'll definitely be talking about that tonight for sure. Thank you so much for being here. Friends in chat, as I said, this is an AMA show, so hey, go ahead and drop your questions for Eric in chat. It's helpful if you tag at EDHRecCast. It helps me see them better so I can get those questions to Eric. We're going to start off with a few of my own questions to get things kicked off while we wait for chat to start filling up the window there. I always like to start these off by having my guest kind of give us your origin story. How did you, I guess twofold here, how did you get started in Magic, and then how did you get started in Magic card altering?
Okay. Great questions. I love that.
Thank you.
And I love describing it as an origin story.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me feel important. I started playing Magic in 7th grade. I started a new school, and I went to a sleepover maybe 2 weeks into the school year, and the first thing everyone did was they're bringing out their Magic decks, and this is completely new to me. I had no idea what Magic was, and they were talking about everything seemed to be tribal. There was like the Elf deck and their Sliver deck, and it was really fun. I mostly just watched people play. I think I maybe played a game or two.
Mm-hmm.
But the morning when my parents picked me up, I was like, I need to go acquire some Magic cards. Because not only was I I fell in love with the game, but it was also just like this social to get to know people at school. So 7th grade, that was right around Urza's Saga. So I've been playing for about 26 years.
Wow, yeah.
And then Alters happened much later. In 2008, I was working as a graphic designer I had just graduated from art school. Excuse me a sec. And I was on the MTG Salvation. What is that called? It's a message board. It was a message board.
Okay.
And I mainly was on there for cubing. But then one day I kind of wandered over to like the art section, and I saw people were making Magic altars. And they were, what I do now, acrylic paintings on top of Magic cards, using cards for canvases. And I was like, that's pretty cool. And, I'm an art school graduate. Like, I think I could try that. So I went home and broke out the acrylic paints and painted my first Magic altar. And then that was a hobby for about 3 years. And then in 2011, I was in like job transition, and I was like, maybe I could just like, sell a couple altars to kind of like keep me afloat while I'm looking for a new job. And what are we at? That was 2011. 14 years later, I'm doing it full time. It's like I would describe myself as a freelance illustrator, but altars are like my bread and butter. It's like 90% of what I do for work.
Wow, that's got to be pretty exciting to be able to just paint on magic cards for a living. Like I got to imagine, like when you tell family about it, they're like, "What?" Like how hard
Yeah.
is it to describe what you do to like your family or your in-laws or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, family and in-laws, they're kind of used to it by now because it's
Yeah.
been so long. But it's certainly in the beginning, they were kind of like, "What is this?" or what, And as the years have gone by and it's continued to kind of like snowball, they're kind of like, "Whoa, that's cool," or they kind of get it now. But certainly that feeling with like strangers or especially non-Magic players, they're kind of like, what are these or whatever, and I have to kind of like break out the Instagram and be like, no, no, these are like painted on like a little miniature canvas.
That's very cool. I mean, not a lot of people can say that they do that for a living, so it's very unique career to get into, but it's got to be pretty exciting to kind of be your own boss. I mean, obviously you have like commissions and stuff, but you can work at your own hours and you know that kind of stuff. So that must be pretty exciting. Um, what advice would you give to somebody who's wanting to get into altering like you do?
I would say just dive right in. I think a lot about altering that, my knowledge of altering has come from just kind of just playing around and having fun with it. And I would say before I even started painting magic altars, I wasn't really like much of a painter. I worked in more like dry media,
Yeah.
and so I was kind of like teaching myself along the way. And there's lots of resources online, including my pages. I try to educate people and answer questions about um, things that you're struggling with in the beginning. But I think there's maybe just too much hesitation from the beginner artist to not just go figure it out, like trial and error, and like, just work on some junk commons, and the worst thing happens, you mess up like a junk common.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
actually tried it for a little while, like altering, and I'm not like a visual artist at all, but I tried painting on a few like basic lands, like extending some of the old John Avon arts, and it wasn't
Was
great.
it fun though?
It was pretty fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think, if you don't put too much pressure on yourself, it's like it's great, just like meditation. It still is for me. It keeps me real even.
Right. Um, Now I've seen pictures online that appear to be altars of like Power Nine cards, like the Moxes. Is that real? Are those
It's real,
actual Moxes?
100% real. I
No
actually,
way.
I don't even have like a accurate figure for how many Power Nine cards I've altered at this point.
Really?
But it's probably half a dozen of each piece. So um, substantial number of copies. In fact, when I was just in MagicCon Chicago, one of my like something that was really fun was to just go around the dealer hall and kind of look in the cases and like see how many dealers had work for me, and a lot of it was the Power Nine that I had altered.
Now, how do you feel about people like selling the stuff that you made for them? Does that make you feel bad or like no?
No, not at all. I
Yeah.
feel great. Because I mean, ultimately, I think there is maybe like a very small minority who think that by altering a card, you diminish its value, and that can be true. You certainly shrink the population of people who are maybe interested in buying that copy of a card. But I mean, the way that I make my living is that people buy my cards for substantially more than what the unpainted card is worth.
Yeah.
So when a card gets resold that is my work, I think it enforces that there is a market for these and that other people who, besides the person who bought it initially, are interested in it. So it's not like I don't dare call it an investment, but you do like retain value in owning it. You know, it just like any other piece of artwork.
So do you ever see those cards at the dealers and see them being sold for like more than what you got paid to make it and think, oh, I didn't charge enough for that?
I mean, it's kind of hard to. I think as an artist, you kind of have to live with that sort of thing. Like,
Yeah.
um, honestly, I'm happy to see the numbers go up because hopefully that means that future work I can charge more for. But I think when you're a working artist, you just have to be like, this is my fee. I'm happy with receiving that fee in the moment, and what happens in the future happens in the future.
Very cool. We've got a few questions in chat here. I'm going to give you some of those. We got Georgia Dolio's bringing up a hot topic here about AI. How do you feel about using AI as a tool to generate images?
Ooh, that is, I mean, that's a really hot button issue, especially in the art world right now.
Yeah.
Um, I think there definitely needs to be regulation for it. Obviously, a lot of these engines that are coming out that have trained on artists' work without their permission is not cool and not acceptable. So there definitely needs to be some sort of regulation. But I also, on the flip side of that, I also AI is here to stay, and it's not going to just affect the art world. It's going to affect every single industry on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So I think everyone just kind of has to like find a way to work with it, to like be comfortable with it, because it's going to be here to stay in some capacity. I would just like to see it done in an ethical way.
Do you think, I guess the question is, how is it done in an ethical way? Do you think that that's been figured out and people aren't doing it? Or do you think that's still something we need to understand?
I think it has to do, I mean, it's going to end up being like some sort of legislation.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously, the way AI is used is kind of going to differ depending on where you are in the world. But yeah, I don't think anyone has the answer yet as to what that legislation could look like. It's kind of like right now it's Wild West, and the developers of AI are just kind of plugging away, and the users are plugging away,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's going to look really, really different in like the next 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Let's see. Morgan in chat asks, how is the MTG altar space different for you and in general compared to 10 plus years ago?
It's changed really dramatically, for sure. When I first started altering, there wasn't a tremendous market for altars. I mean, they were essentially before like acrylic painting altars, which I'm saying like 2008 roughly, maybe a little bit before then. Um, the people drawing on cards were like the official magic artists, and they were being made in like Sharpie. Um, and then I think when the painted altars started coming out, they just started as like simple extensions where you take the original artwork and you just extend it out over the borders. You make a borderless card, which didn't exist. Magic makes borderless cards now, but back then they were not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, I mean, that's a whole nother story about how altars have kind of influenced how Wizards approaches their
For sure.
treatments.
Yeah.
I think they're definitely linked, and Wizards has gotten a lot of ideas from looking at the altar world. But back to the initial question of how the world has changed. Yeah, so it's just evolved, and I think uh, what I personally wanted to do with altars as like the years kind of rolled on by is I wanted to make things that look different than someone had ever seen before. So, it started as extensions and people were producing a lot of extensions. So then I started to kind of like incorporate these pop culture references and then transition to, the past few years where I'm trying to really push myself in terms of like how much detail I can pack into like a single card, and I'm trying to do like hyper realistic,
Hmm.
portraiture at 88 millimeters tall. Um, and those are the sort of things that I didn't even think were going to be possible 10 years ago. So, yeah, it has changed. And the market has obviously exploded. I mean, like not to, toot my own horn, but my cards are going for like four figures now. And back in 2008, when I was doing it as a hobby, my wife asked me, "Do you think you could do this for a living?" And I just kind of laughed at her and was
Yeah.
like, "No way, no way." I was charging $40 for a commission. And
Hmm.
I was just like, I just can't make that work. Like, there's not enough hours in the day. But as the market has grown and I put more and more hours into each card and they become more and more valuable, then it became viable.
Around when did you switch over to full time for this?
So I started in 2011. Um, I was scraping by. I had a spouse that also had like a steady income,
Hmm.
and luckily she was kind of like do this, and I was kind of supplementing it with freelance work. But I would say around 2011 I was full time doing this.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
Very cool. Murphy Murph One asks, "What's your sketching process? Do you do hand sketches first, or digital work then transfer?"
It depends. Sometimes I'll do sketches if I feel like it's just going to be too difficult to digitally do it, which is usually my go-to. I'll do a digital mock-up in Photoshop, and that kind of ensures that I can see how the details work at scale and around all the card elements.
Hmm. Okay.
But there's been certain projects where, like, what comes to mind is like I did a set of Amonkhet Egyptian gods, like in the style of hieroglyphics. And I didn't have a reference image for that, so I had to like totally draw out the god, and so I did that by hand, and then I scanned in that drawing, and then ended up pulling it into Photoshop and digitally mocking it up and everything. So I do a little bit of both.
Very cool. Um, Murphy Murph also asks, "Are you ever surprised by how popular an altar is when it auctions and the final price?"
Um, yeah, definitely.
And
I
then my
think
follow up question to that is, "What's the most you've ever sold at an auction for a card?"
okay. Yeah, I put a ton of thought into the concept for the card choice, all of the decisions that go into like mocking up the altar. Um, so I think I anticipate like people liking it. Like this is ultimately a business, and I want these cards to be desirable. So I want to produce something that's desirable. But yeah, sometimes it depends. Sometimes I think like, I was like really excited about a project and maybe it's like people are not as like stoked about it as, and then sometimes there's surprises like I saw someone mention the Lego Counterspell,
Mm-hmm.
which answers your follow-up question, which that is the highest selling card for me, and that card went for 13,000.
Thirteen
Um,
thousand?
It went for 13,000,
Holy
which
crap!
really, yeah, it blows all my other cards out of the water. Um, but yeah, like I said, like most of I tend to expect four figures from my cards these days, but that one went for five, which was crazy.
Wow. Where did the idea for that one come from?
I had wanted to do a Lego altar for like a really long time. and that's kind of how ideas start. Is I'll kind of have like a base like idea, but I'm not always so sure what it looks like. So I probably sat on that idea for like 6 months to a year, just kind of like mostly trying to figure out like what card it could go on, and then like I'm an adult fan of Lego, so I was like looking at like some of my old Legos one day, and I actually have him on my desk right now. But I saw this like old school. Where is he? Yeah, hold him up for you. This wizard.
Hmm.
Sorry. Um, and I was like, oh, like that could go on like a wizard card. So actually, the initial idea was I would put him on Snapcaster Mage.
Sure.
And then when I was mocking it up, really important part of the process, I was like, it just looks a little too modern and wordy. Like there's something very like timeless about Legos, I think. And so I wanted a card that felt more time, like also very timeless. And so I ended up switching it to Counterspell. And so, yeah, it was kind of a long road arriving at that final concept where like I had sat on the idea for a really long time, and then like last minute I ended up changing the card that it would go on.
Very cool. Yeah, that's a that's such a cool piece. I also really liked the Severance one that you just did. I think that auction just ended recently, like a couple days ago,
Hmm.
right?
Yep. My favorite show, by the way. If you haven't seen Severance, go watch it right now. It's on Apple TV. Just
I
finished season two.
Yep. I have been watching it with my wife. She's a much bigger fan of it than I am. But I enjoy it.
Yeah, my wife is like she was kind of on board for like one season and then she's like, eh. So it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
I think it asks your kind of devout attention, and that's like not always like the type of television that even I'm in the mood to watch. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really well made show though.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely no doubt about that. The most impressive thing to me has been the acting for sure.
Hmm.
It was I think it was like the second to last episode, where Christopher Walken um, had a scene with John Turturro in like a
Mm.
train station, and it's like just the chemistry between the two, and like this love that they can't pursue and everything, and it's just it was pretty amazing to watch these two guys, have this kind of chemistry like that.
Yeah,
So
I totally agree. I think it's actually some of Christopher Walken's best work.
I
Because
would agree.
usually he's like kind of goofy and he's got like the iconic voice or whatever, and like his character in Severance is not that.
Yeah, I don't think he's had a ton of like serious work in the last couple decades.
Hmm.
Definitely like he gets brought in as like he's Christopher Walken, that kind of thing. But yeah, his acting on the show has been pretty amazing. Even just as just a very minor side character, but I enjoyed it quite a bit watching him perform on that. Let's get back to questions. Murphy Murph asks, how many pieces do you work on at once? One at a time, or do you have multiple things going at once?
One at a time. I think I'm trying to wonder. I'm trying to think if that has ever been different throughout like my career. Um, I think once or twice I tried to kind of do like assembly line,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just it just didn't work.
Okay.
I just like I wanted. It's very like uh, it's very focused based work, and just like knowing that there was like another card like waiting in the wings that was kind of like half completed, kind of like pulled some of my attention away.
Yeah.
What has changed is the number of hours that go into each piece, which kind of goes along with how has altering evolved for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it when I first started in 2011, I was making 2 cards a day, so I was spending around 4 hours each, and now I put about 40 to 60 hours into one card. So at least 10 times the amount of work.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah. So I'm producing, you do the math, around 3 to 4 cards a month now.
Okay. I bet you wish you could do more, huh?
No,
No.
No, I actually, like it's going well for me,
Uh-huh.
and I don't want to burn out on it. I think that's like something you really have to monitor as an artist, especially is that you if you're just cranking out work, just create. Especially as a freelancer, where you kind of dictate the amount of hours that you could put in. I could easily put in an 80-hour work week, uh, but I think I would just burn out so quickly. And part of the beauty of making art for a living is that it's something that I enjoy doing. And I think if I was just doing it all the time, like way too much, um, I wouldn't like it. I wouldn't love it anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
What percentage of your work is commission versus like the stuff that you put on auction?
So I stopped doing commissions in 2021.
Oh, okay. So zero.
Zero. And
Why?
now
Why did you make that decision?
so uh, I did commissions up until that point from 2011 to 2021, so
Mm-hmm.
10 years. And a big part of my day was answering emails, either giving people information on how to commission work, following up on people following up, or actively working with a client on what their commission was going to look like. And so that, I mean, it took up a tremendous amount of my time. And I was just hanging out with a friend one time and I was like, every time I put up like an auction on eBay, it tends to go for like a little bit more than like what I'm commissioning work for. And he was like, well, why are you commissioning what you're doing? And I was like, hmm, it's a really good question. And so I decided if I transitioned fully to auctions, not
Mm-hmm.
only would I probably achieve better, higher prices, um, but also I could just make more work and I could. When you're an artist, like I enjoyed doing the commission work, but uh, when you are the progenitor of the idea, I feel like you're just a little bit more invested in it, and so I think it has helped me grow as an artist. And like a lot of the things that I'm doing now that I didn't think was possible 5 or 10 years ago is because I've made this transition and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna put another, 20 hours into this piece and just like see where it goes.
Okay.
Which, I didn't when I had like a queue of people waiting on commissions that, I was a little bit more under the gun.
Very cool. So, like all the Power Nine stuff, was any of that commission, or did you do that all on your own?
All the Power Nine was commissioned. I've
Okay.
never painted one of my own.
Okay.
Yeah, which may change. I've been kind of like thinking about that,
Yeah.
like, um, yeah, because I just have like a couple of pricey cards hanging around, and I was like, yeah, I should paint one of these.
See, for me, like if I was just holding one of those, I'd be like too shaky to be able to really paint on it. Like this thing I'm holding is just too valuable. But obviously, if you've done as much as you have, then you probably got used to it after a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big part of it is that like paint is very forgiving. So if you make a mistake, you can tend to paint over it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beauty of it, and so it's hard to make uncorrectable mistakes.
Sure. Jay Sherwood asks, "Have you tried ultra mediums other than acrylic?"
Um, Not in my professional career. Occasionally I'll use a little bit of permanent ink if I need to do like a really straight line. Otherwise, all my line work is still done with a brush and acrylic. I think when I was like in high school, I go back to like the earliest altars were mostly done by magic artists in like Sharpie. So I definitely like did some of my own in high school in like gel pen or Sharpie or whatever, but acrylic just tends to work best. It's really versatile, and the nice thing is that acrylic dries to like a almost plastic type consistency, and so all my cards are like sleeve playable, and so yeah, I love seeing people play with my cards, and yeah, acrylic allows that.
That was one thing I really struggled with the few times that I tried to alter was like the card just got too thick, you know, with all
Right.
the paint because I was very inexperienced as a painter, so you know I'd like try to cover up my mistakes with more paint, and then the card would just be like too thick, which obviously you are much better at fixing, I'm sure, but that was
Yeah,
definitely the issue for me.
you have to work ultra thin, and that was like one of the learning curves when I first started altering was how do I paint in a way that this card remains playable, that like it's not marked when it's sleeved.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So we've got a few people in chat asking about you actually playing Magic.
hmm
What's your format? How do you like to play?
So I've mostly, I would say, throughout my 26 years or so of playing Magic, I'm a limited player. I love draft. Whether that be the latest Magic set or Cube, which I'm a big proponent of.
Hmm.
Um, but I've played everything. I've played standard, commander. I've been around a long time. I'm an old man. So I've played at the highest levels. I've gone to the Pro Tour once. So yeah, but I would say primarily draft. And to this day, like I still do a ton of arena drafting.
Um, and do you have any decks that you have blinged out? Like, do you have any decks that like have your own cards in them?
No, no. My joke always at the beginning was that like playing with your own altars is like wearing your band's T-shirt. Uh, like it's just kind of like faux pas.
Yeah.
Uh, there's been a couple of times when I was making like 2 cards a day, and um, and I was like that was kind of like my inventory, and like I would go to F&M and I would like you know check with the judge, is this cool to play or whatever, and then I would play with like a couple altars in my deck. But now that I'm putting so much time into the cards, it's like I finish it. I'm like, I gotta sell this, man. I can't hang on to it.
Have you like in the past few years done a card that you just love so much that you just really wanted to keep it?
Definitely. I did a John Singer Sargent after his this is like a if you're not familiar, like a early 20th century painter. But I did one of his paintings, just a recreation called um, Carnation Lily Lily Rose. And uh, I just always really like loved his paintings, and it was just like a really fun piece to make, and it felt really personal, and I did want to hang on to it. So my solution was to like wait like 2 or 3 days before I put it up for auction. Usually, like they go up on eBay immediately.
Hmm.
Um, but I also think there's like a lot of I derive a lot of happiness from like my cards being out in the world, and like people, and they presumably bring other people happiness. Um, so that's like another way to kind of like persuade myself when I'm like attached to a piece to get rid of it. Is like, oh no, this is going to make someone like really really happy, and this is also going to enable me to continue to do this. So yeah.
Okay. Getting back into Magic playing, we were talking about limited. Do you have a favorite limited environment that you can recall?
My pop out answer is cube. So I own many cubes. I own a common uncommon cube and the Pro Tour cube, which is one of every Pro Tour winning card in the constructed formats. Um,
Wow. Okay.
so I brought both of those cubes to CubeCon last year in Madison. So I love playing both of those. I've owned those cubes for over a decade now. Um, if off the top of my head, like official Magic set, I really liked Rise of the Eldrazi. I played a ton of that format, and yeah, really fun.
Rise of the Eldrazi. All right. Well, we just had an anonymous gifter give 10 gift subs out to the community. Whoever you are, thank you so much. We really
Nice.
appreciate it. Absolutely. Let's see. Let's get back to some questions here. Jason Alt asks, are there any positive stories you can tell about any of your bigger clients?
Positive stories. Off the top of my head, I when I went to MagicCon Chicago, I was aware that some of my collectors were at the con, and I was getting even messages over social media like, "Come to this booth, like, we have some of your cards, like, we would love to chat." And so I was just kind of like doing that and like wandering the dealer hall, and then I got to meet like three or four past clients who had like one or two of my cards, or some, one of them who owns quite a few. He owns all of my Lord of the Rings fetch lands.
Okay.
Um, but uh, it's kind of funny because like I only ever really interact with like one of my paintings at a time. Like I paint it and then I send it out into the world.
Sure.
So to like be among like that many that much of like all my past paintings was like kind of like a first for me.
Sure.
And then to also just like put faces to names of like people who I had sold cards to like multiple times in the past. It was great. It made it feel like this is like worthwhile. It's like altering as a full-time profession as an artist is like very niche.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think sometimes it doesn't feel as like prestigious as like maybe like producing, artwork for print, like, like an official magic artist or something. But like, yeah, just kind of interacting with like my past clients and like seeing like their collections and the happiness that has brought them, like that really like, yeah, made it feel worth it. It was great.
Now, do you have like a group of fans that bid on everything you do?
Definitely. I mean, I definitely have some, I would call them patrons at this point, that they are like avid collectors of my work. But luckily there's a lot of them. They're all over the world. I feel like I probably have work in over a dozen countries at this point. Yeah, so yeah, feel very, very fortunate.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I
that's
appreciate you all.
and we appreciate what you do. You do great work. You had mentioned just a little bit ago about becoming like an actual magic artist. Is that something that you would ever consider doing, like doing a Eric Klug secret layer or something like that?
I definitely would. It's kind of just like the ball is in their court at this point.
Okay.
Because like the thing about I think illustrating for Magic specifically is that it's hyper competitive. Um, so I think generally what happens with the art direction is they're recruiting artists rather than I think the bulk of the time that's what happens is they recruit an artist over you submit your portfolio and they choose you, because I think they are inundated with that, with prospective portfolios from artists. So I've submitted my portfolio to Wizards in the past, not recently, but I think I'm just kind of like building a profile online, and I know a lot of people at Wizards, so I know that they are aware of me, and if they ever want to hire me, I'm all for it. And I did work for Flesh and Blood last year, so kind of
Very cool.
tangential to doing magic work. And yeah, I always kind of like enjoy those opportunities to do work for print, um, because it's just cool to have, you know, hundreds of thousands of, knowing that there's hundreds of thousands of copies of like your artwork out in the world, which is like a very different feeling
Yeah.
from the one of one altars. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Do you play Flesh and Blood at all?
I don't play Flesh and Blood. It seems really hard.
Yeah, I mean, I've only played it once or twice, and that was a while
Mm,
ago. But it's, yeah, I mean, just like Magic, it's not any more complex than Magic. That's for sure.
mm.
Murphy Murph asks, "Do you have any abandoned projects? Any cards that you started painting that you kind of fell out of love with and gave up?"
Probably in the early days, like if I like go digging in one of my boxes, there's maybe some pieces that didn't end up getting finished, but I think generally speaking, if I get, if I've gotten far enough along into a project, like I'll see it to the end. Um, and that kind of is um the beauty of doing all like the digital mock-ups and doing like really meticulous planning before any paint touches the card, is that I can kind of address those problems before they happen, and there's no like, oh, I did, this isn't going to fit here or something. It's like, I've kind of figured that all out.
Excellent. Jason Alt asks, "How have you managed to enjoy Magic after making it a quote jobby?" I think that's a portmanteau of job and hobby. Does it lessen your enjoyment of the game at all, having to work in the medium?
I don't think so. For me, my work day is just painting at this point. Like yes, it's on a Magic card, and there's connections with like game mechanics and like conceptual ideas and things like that require a knowledge of Magic, but yeah, it just feels like painting at this point. And so when I like end up playing Magic, I'm like, oh yeah, this is like this is fun still. And I also just appreciate that by continuing to play Magic, I maintain that knowledge of the game, because like I want to know what new card comes out, so that like maybe that triggers like a new idea, like um, Thunder Junction. Like what comes to mind is Thunder Junction just came out last year, and when that was spoiled or the set was spoiled, I was like, oh, I really want to do like a good, the bad, and the ugly altar, because to
Yeah.
fit the Western theme.
Yep.
And if I wasn't like in tune with Magic, like that probably wouldn't occur to me. And a big reason why I don't like alter Flesh and Blood cards, because I really don't have knowledge of the game in the same way that I have knowledge of Magic. So um yeah, just like staying connected with the game helps with my work, and then the game is just still fun. So yeah.
And that was your final showdown painting, right? The one you did
Yeah,
for.
and like I had that concept was like waiting before Final Showdown was even spoiled.
Mhm.
So I just end up I was like, okay, like that's gonna happen at some point. I didn't know what it was gonna look like, and then once I saw the spoilers, it all kind of came together.
Very cool. People in chat, we've got like about 10 minutes here, so go ahead and keep dropping those questions for Eric here. And we got one more. Bombastic Bompas says, "As a fellow artistic person with music, I get burnt out a lot from my work. Just seems like sometimes I fall out of love when I'm with what I'm creating. How do you deal with burnout?"
Um, that's a great question, because I think it's something that I put a lot of mental energy into. I kind of spoke earlier in terms of like limiting my hours, um, to specifically address burnout. Um, so I think if you're not doing it as like a full-time job, or even if you are, I think you want to look at like how much time you're spending doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you're not enjoying yourself, if you feel really bogged down, just I think it's fine to walk away. I take lots and lots of breaks throughout the day, um, especially regarding altering, because it can be like very physical to be like, I don't use magnification, so like my face is like very up close to the card. I'm kind of hunched over,
Mm-hmm.
very tense in the body. Um, but yeah, I think that's one part. Like you need to kind of like listen to your mind and your body, and if you're just not feeling it, then it's like you're not going to be very productive.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
So, in working in such a like a small medium close up, have you found any change in your eyesight over the last few years that you've had to correct with like reading glasses or anything like that?
You just reminded me I have to make an optometrist appointment.
Oh, good. That's
Um, but the last time I was at the optometrist, my eyesight had actually gotten better. Um,
wow.
yeah, fingers crossed for this time. But yeah, no, uh part of what I do also is like throughout the process, I'll actually scan the card in and then look at it blown up on my screen, and that's kind of like a version of magnification that I'll use throughout the process. But I don't really like having like a glass in front of me while I'm working.
Okay. Knickknacks has a two-part question here. I'm not sure if we really covered this. If you have a favorite altar that you've done, and then the other question was, what's the hardest one that you've done?
Picking if people ask me what my favorite is, and it's like choosing between children.
Yep.
So I don't know if I have like a really great answer for it. Um, I would say that like the farewell that I did last year after Arthur Rackham is among one of my favorites that I've done, but it's kind of like it's like a flavor of the week, you know. I try to post past work on like my social media every day, and when I'm going through those like old scans and photos, um every once in a while, like something different just catches my eye and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I remember like working on that. That was really fun." Um so no favorites specifically. And then the hardest is it's like I try to make it the next piece that I'm working on. And like I that sounds like a cop out answer, but like
Mm-hmm.
it's totally true. Is I want the next piece that I'm working on, generally speaking, to be like the hardest piece that I ever worked on because I want to be growing as an artist. Um yeah, and I hope that that never really changes.
Okay. Very cool. Murphy Murph asks, do you ever feel like you're in a rut coming up with an original idea? Do you have like a list of possible ideas that you have set aside that you just pull from and say, when this time is right, I'm going to do this one?
Yeah, I have multiple post-it notes. I have like notepad messages on my phone of like potential ideas. I will spend full days like working on concepting. Um and I definitely feel like the rut thing, because especially if like the last thing I did gets like a really good response, you kind of have to like you feel like you have to live up to that like expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Um which can be really hard, coming up with ideas, and it's not just a matter of like, will someone respond to it? It's like, if it's not the right card or whatever, like it doesn't resonate. So it's like all of the elements, and so yeah, I do feel like I'm in a rut sometimes, and I think I just have to like tell myself that I've been here before and I made it out, and just kind of keep plugging away and remind myself that this is a job and like there's going to be kind of like difficult aspects to it. So
Okay. Let's see. MIDI F165 asks, how big of an inspiration was your older brother?
I assume that's my brother who's asking that question.
Okay. See, I didn't. I was worried that like you had some famous older brother or something like that I should have known about that I didn't catch in my homework here. But
If I'll flatter him for a little bit. No, my older brother probably is responsible for a lot of my competitive drive as a human being.
okay.
Always trying to like be better than him, and luckily I think I got him beat in the art department. So also I'm taller, even though
Oh,
I'm younger. Um, but no, he's a great brother. So what can you say?
excellent. I won't get into specifics, but I'm very jealous about that. Uh, Anyway, mental misplay rating with a party of 18. Hello, everybody. Welcome. We are just wrapping up our AMA chat with Eric Klug here, who is an exceptionally talented altarist. And we've got time for just a few more questions. Duke Vulture would like you to talk about what you have in the works. Are you willing to tell us what you're working on now?
Ooh. I'll tell you the card. How about that? So
Yeah.
like I like to keep the ideas secret. Like a lot of artists put out like kind of process work as they're making the work.
Yeah.
But sometimes I feel like that kind of like saps the magic out of like seeing the finished product immediately. So
Sure.
I'm not going to tell you what it is, but right now I just started working on a hedge maze, the Forest Island.
Nice.
Yeah,
Very cool. I'm excited to see what
yeah.
that's going to be.
Give
Do
some
you know when
ideas
that
what's on
one's
hedge.
Do you know when
I'll
that one's going to go up on auction?
I'll probably finish that by the end of the week, so you'll be able to see it by the end of the week.
Excellent. Very
Yeah.
cool. Do you have one up on auction right now?
No,
Okay.
no. The hedge maze will be the next one. Yep.
Okay. Excellent. And one question I wanted to ask you is, Eric, who is your favorite artist?
Ooh. Um, I'll give you two. I'll give you one who is deceased and one who is contemporary living.
Okay.
Um, so uh, the deceased one is Albert Bierstadt, who was working. He's a member of the Hudson River School, if you're an art history buff. And he was working in like the 1860s. I actually just painted a piece by him on a prismatic vista called Mount Corcoran, so you can see that on like my Instagram or Facebook if you want to go back and look through the images. And then the contemporary artist that I love is Tony Dieterlizzi, who is a former magic artist, but also like a New York Times best-selling children's book author. And he made the Spiderwick Chronicles, if you ever saw those, that got turned into like movies.
Sure.
Yeah, and he illustrated Goblin Game, which is like one of my favorite magic cards, and I own the sketch for it.
You own the sketch for it.
I
That's
own the
exciting.
sketch. I'm actually looking at it right now. It's in the corner of my room.
Nice. Just inspiration there, right?
Yeah, Goblin Game is just it's like a funny little 7 mana sorcery that makes you hide objects, but it's not an unglued card, not a silver border set. So when that card it came out in Plane Shift when I was in high school, and when I saw it, it shows Squee, the goblin who was on the Weatherlight crew, and he's like got this stupid little grin on his face, and the card is very ridiculous, and I just immediately fell in love with it.
Very cool. Murphy Murph asks, "What do you do while you're working on art? Do you listen to music or podcasts, or do you just like complete silence?"
I like, weirdly enough, I like TV, but usually it's stuff that I've seen before, so that
Sure.
I'm not like too ingrained. The past couple of weeks, I've actually just been rewatching Severance episodes, so that like I like prime myself for the next episode coming out,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe catch something that I didn't see before. But yeah, beyond that, I'll watch Twitch streams. I watch a lot of Magic streamers during the day, and my like break times. I mentioned like I take a lot of breaks. Is I'll play just like a single game of Arena.
Very cool. I hope at some point you'll do an altar of one of Milchick's dances. Do you have that in your in your
I definitely think more Severance altars need to happen. I
yeah.
think there's too many great like characters, and the for people who out of the know, the last one I did was of the character Mark S. Adam Scott
Mm-hmm.
on Fractured Identity. And that was like a promo image for the show. So that it kind of felt like that was the first one that needed to happen. But there's like some other niche stuff, like the Milchick dance or whatever. Yeah, they
I
need to
hope to
happen.
see that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, we are just about out of time here, so we're gonna do a quick lightning round. If you're up for
Okay.
it, just a few quick
Sure.
questions, and then we'll send you on home. Favorite movie?
Shawshank Redemption.
Good choice. Favorite musician or band?
It moves around a lot. Right now I like an artist named Ruby Waters. She's kind of like my like driving around music right now.
Okay. Favorite video game?
Resident Evil 4.
Resident Evil 4. All right.
Yeah, probably played through it like a million times.
Favorite food?
Favorite food? Pizza.
Pizza.
Yeah,
All right. Last thing you ate?
pizza.
Fitting. Very fitting. Favorite adult beverage?
I like just a good like neat whiskey probably.
Hey, me too.
Oh
Do you have
yeah.
a preference? Scotch, bourbon,
I like the Japanese stuff.
Japanese?
So
All
give
right.
me like a hibiki is really
Okay.
affordable and drinkable.
Mhm.
But yeah, the Yamazakis are a little pricier and really delicious.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. And last question. Favorite Pokemon?
Got to be Squirtle, my starter back in blue version.
Yeah, I love that I've asked this question so many times and everybody has an answer. But if somebody asked me this question, I wouldn't because I've never watched Pokemon. I've never really played it. But
Uh,
I'm glad. Hey, there you go.
there you go. Psyduck is like a close second after Squirtle.
Excellent. Eric, thank you so much for being on this show. It was an absolute pleasure getting to chat with you about all things altering and magic and all that stuff. Before we go, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you online, how they can support you, and any upcoming events that you have?
So I go by Klug Alters, KLUG_alters, and that's my handle on all social media on Facebook, on Twitter, on Blue Sky, on Instagram. I cross post across all of those platforms pretty much every day. I don't really have any events coming up, but I'm putting out an auction every 1 to 2 weeks, and you will see those linked on all of those social media platforms.
Excellent. I'll be watching for those Milchik dancing altars. I won't be able to afford to bid on it, but I'm sure going to be excited to see it.
Fair enough.
All right, friends, and you can find me on Blue Sky at Zupkeep. That's Zupkeep. We will be back next week with my good friend Kuro Hitsuki. So make sure to tune in next week, Tuesday, same time for that. Speaking of Kuro Hitsuki, we're going to raid Kuro because he's live playing Commander right now. So thank you, everyone, for hanging out. And take care and tell Kuro we love him very much. And we'll see him next week. Bye, everybody.
See ya.